So, Laura, you throw up before big speeches? Is that what you do? Is that your
I
bestie?
I do. I throw up before big speeches.
You do, huh? So you throw everything out, and that's the way that you manage your anxiety. Ha!
Uh, It's not ideal, but it
No,
happens. So
but
I have
it's
sympathy for people who have high anxiety. I know what that's like.
okay. Hey, Amsi, let's do it. All of you to our new edition of Leaders Who Have Something to Say. This, as you know, it is the place to get inspired with the best actionable leadership advice from outstanding leaders. I'm Mariana Ferrari, and our special guest today is Laura Bergells, with whom we will talk about managing your Okay, welcome all of you to our new edition of Leaders Who Have Something to Say. Unfortunately, we had some technical issues and we're not going to be able to put our videos on today, but at least we're getting this started, because getting anxious about public speaking and doing this event live, I mean, it did pull out some anxiety here in our back end. So I'm Mariana Ferrari, and our special guest today that I want to introduce her properly. It's Laura Bergells, with whom we will talk about managing your anxiety when speaking in public. Laura, like myself, is a public speaking coach and a storyteller. She has one of the best public speaking training programs on LinkedIn Learning. So if you have LinkedIn Learning, I do recommend that you check out Laura's trainings, because she has more than one. She has 3, actually. So go check it out. We have Amsi Jackson today, our executive producer, and Mar Santander, that despite that we're going only in audio mode only, she's going to be getting your questions and your comments from the chat room. So welcome to all of you. And Laura, it is such a pleasure to have you here sharing your best advice on managing anxiety when public speaking. And today it's such a special day to speak about that.
It is. It's always a special day.
So what do you say? Do you say that we should start by asking our audience a question?
I would love it.
How they feel about it? Sure.
Yeah, can I ask a question? Because I asked this question a few weeks ago and we had a lot of fun with it in class. And the question was, what is some of the worst advice that you've gotten to manage your anxiety before a presentation? What advice didn't work out for you? You tried it, but it didn't work for you. So if you could pop that in the comments, I'd like to hear that. We had some very funny answers in the class of sometimes people are well-meaning. They say things and they think they're being helpful, and it's not helpful for you at all.
I know. So what have you tried in the past? I'm going to put it in the comments here, because on LinkedIn, because as we do not have a video today, then it might not be popping up on the screen. So anyhow, so while our audience shares with us their worst advice, do you want to share some of the ones that you collected from your students? Things that they had been told before going live like today?
Yes, some of them were so silly. Some of them I had not heard before. The first was, well, look who's here. It's the most scared person in the room.
Oh my goodness. Oh, so that was some sort of comment, well-intentioned possibly or not, who knows, that was supposed to bring this person's anxiety down, the speaker's anxiety down.
Yeah. The idea was, as we tried to work out why somebody would say something like that, was let's point out the nerves, and that will make them feel less nervous. That didn't work for that person. But here's the weird thing. That may work for someone else.
Absolutely. Yes.
It's bizarre. So a lot of the times the advice that we get, we need to try it to see how it works with our own body chemistry and our own psychological makeup.
Well, in fact, as we were preparing for this joint session today, you and I, we were sharing, how do we calm our anxiety, or how do we work out our anxiety before public speaking? And you and I have very different emotional reactions and emotional experiences before we go public. So can you share your best tip, which I hope it's not throwing up, to calm down your own anxiety?
Oh my goodness. I believe that everyone needs to find their ritual for what it is that helps them manage their emotions and their anxiety. And I know what works for me may not work for a lot of people. I do like looking at the research. I know what works for a lot of people. And you might have a piece of research that says this works for 78% of the people to help them reduce their anxiety by 26 or whatever, a lot of numbers. So the bottom line is it works for a lot of people and it works a little bit. All right, but now I need to find my own cocktail of what it is of the tips that are going to work for me. So there's general advice, but then there's specific things that I do as well.
Right. So you were sharing a funny story, funny now that it is a story, not when you had to go through it. That you were arriving to a big speech and you had this kind of very weird feeling in your body that you're either feeling sick or feeling nauseated. So tell us that story, and what did you finally do to calm yourself down?
Yeah, I was a couple of 100 miles away from a speaking event that I had to give. So I was flying in, and as I got off the plane, I was nauseous. So I hate to say it, but I went to the washroom and I had to throw up. And I thought, what is wrong with me? I've given this speech 100 times before. I've never been feeling like this. Am I nervous? Am I sick from the plane? Do I have an inner ear imbalance? I don't know. I get to the hotel room, I get to my private area, and darn it, if I didn't get really shaky and throw up again. So I know that the research says positive self-talk can really help you manage your nerves. Knowing this, I looked into the mirror and I said, you've given this speech 1,000 times. You're going to do great. You're confident. And I instantly threw up as soon as I said, you're going to do great. You're confident. Went and
so you did not do great.
Well, wait, I turned it around because
that minute, I
was not doing great. And I was also pretty panicked about, I have to go on in an hour. I can't be doing this on stage. So I got mad. I got really quite annoyed. All the self-help books that ever told me that, I had to do this self-talk to feel better.
And all the cheapy advice that you had been receiving throughout the years.
Right. So I kind of had what I would call a mini temper tantrum in the hotel room. I just walked back and forth and said, oh, this stupid self-help industry, they don't know anything. And while I was doing that, I noticed something. I had control over my stomach and my nerves. When I was a little mad like that, suddenly my nerves went away. So the positive self-help didn't work for me, but being a little angry did. And I'm not talking about anger like, oh, I'm mad at a social injustice. I was a little annoyed with myself and annoyed at the self-help industry. So I did that. I went on stage. I was a little green around the gills, but I was fine. I did my presentation. I did not throw up on stage. After I got back to the hotel room and everything, I, threw up again. But
so at any point did it cross your mind that you were really sick, not in panic, but just sick?
Well, it compounded it, right? Because I might have been sick. I might not have been sick, but I knew that I couldn't go on stage like that. And I started becoming increasingly nervous about uncontrolled vomiting before I was ready to go on stage.
Okay.
Right? And of course that made me anxious. How could I not be anxious when I couldn't control my own bodily functions?
I cannot possibly imagine. I mean, I'm going to knock on wood that never, ever happens to me.
Oh, I do not recommend it. I wish that I had never gone through it, but in retrospect, it taught me some very valuable things about myself, right? That anxiety can compound on itself, and that the work of positive self-talk that works for a lot of people in some circumstances, it simply didn't work in that moment. So later in life, I had a young student who was very anxious before presentations. And she said it was her ritual to throw up before every presentation. And I told her my story. And I said, if you're going to try the anger thing, which is a little weird, I'll admit. I said, do it in a safe space that's private. For example, I had my hotel room. I was not having a mini temper tantrum out in public. I was just doing it in a private space. I said, and don't get mad over some major social injustice. Make it a silly thing, like I'm mad at the self-help industry right now, or annoyed with it. And she said, well, the next time she did a public speaking engagement, she tried it. She said, I got mad at my roommate because she left cookie crumbs on the coffee table, a very small thing. She goes, I had a little, dust up about it with myself in my bedroom. And she goes, and I noticed the same thing. I felt better. I had control of my nerves. I had control of my stomach. And she walked to her engagement and she just kept kind of festering on it. So while a lot of people, the positive self-talk works, sometimes you have to find something in your own routine that works for you.
Well,
Now you are a big positive self-talk person.
Well, not only positive self-talk person, but I do have some physical things that I do that that they're pretty proven, medically proven to work. And one that I love, the medically proven is that as you accelerate your heartbeat, then the moment that you accelerate your heartbeat, then your nerves start calming down. Because if you're getting, say for example, that you're jumping up and down behind the stage, right? So all of your nerves are just popping out of your body, out of your system, right? If you're throwing up, then maybe it's not good advice. But if you're not throwing up, and if you're just getting ready to bring your energy to stage, I do that a lot. I jump, I dance, and I have one song that I'm going to share with our audience here, which I love. That it's The Best from Tina Turner. So The Best, it says, you're simply the best. And I sing behind the scenes. I go and I sing, I'm simply the best, and I keep saying that to myself. And I think that Tina is singing that to me. And so, I get all my energy and I bring my energy on stage. So that's the one thing I do. And then I also recommend that for people that either have big speeches like we do, or that they are, maybe it's a small speech. It does not matter. The size doesn't matter in this case, but what does matter is that if you really know yourself and you get anxious about public speaking, what I do recommend is that you prep yourself emotionally and mentally a couple of days before. So don't wait until the last minute, because you're just preparing your speech and what you're going to say, but just go some days before and do some visualization of what that event is going to be like for you, of your audience. You think that your audience is waiting for you to thrive. They're not sitting there to see you fail. They're there for you. That's the one thing I tell everybody. The audience is there for you. They're waiting for you. They want you to shine. And you have to remind yourself about that. So visualize that they want their smiles and that they want you to shine. And then the other thing is I do some incantations, and that is my self trick. Incantations work very well in the human brain because they're four steps. So in four tempos, like any song, like salsa, merengue, or whichever type of music, it's in four tempos. So incantations would go something like, it's what the Marines do when they go to war, and it's not, they have to prepare themselves to possibly die. And we've seen it in the movies, right? When they go marching and they go, na, 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 na. Now, they don't say na, na, na. They create an incantation for the moment. So I create my incantations, and one of them is, Well, it's the one that I use all the time. It's not one of them. The only thing I do change is the emotion I need to feel. So I'm going to say something like, all the optimism I need to feel, it's within me now. All the optimism I need to feel, it's within me now. And I embed that into my body. I choose optimism many times because optimism enlightens my creative juices, makes my words flow, and also brings the best energy out of me. And that's the best energy I want to give to my audience. So you can say, all the confidence I need, it's within me now, if you're anxious about it, or all the calm I need, it's within me now. So whatever the emotion you need to feel, you have to keep repeating it to yourself and marching if you can, or running or walking. So engaging two parts of your body, the brain and also your movements. So move, walk, and do some incantations. That's my 5 cents. I do all of that. It depends on which speech. I would go one way or the other, but I keep doing something about it because I want to be at my best when I'm doing some speech.
I love that for you. I think it speaks to what I was saying, that we all have a ritual that we
Absolutely.
do.
Yes.
And the ritual that works for you and that works for so many people is that, that positivity and that optimism that needs to work for them. I, for one, have my own rituals as well. The rituals that work for me, like I tell my students, may not be the rituals that work for you because I have a different background, different psychological makeup. I think the problem that people run into with anxiety and public speaking is they want this one magic thing, one magic pill to fix the anxiety. And I do request that my students change their relationship with anxiety, because a lot of the language that we use about anxiety is how do we overcome it? How do we beat it? How do we get rid of it? But change the relationship with it and maybe ask yourself the question, how do your nerves help you? And I'll ask the audience that right now. How do you think being anxious or being nervous before a big presentation actually helps you? Because as a person who gets nervous before presentations, I changed my relationship with anxiety to figure out how it works for me. And for me, when I ask that question, at the heart of it is my anxiety helps me to deliver a better presentation. It makes me prepare. It makes me research. It makes me rehearse what I'm going to say. So it allows me, it really is the fuel and it's the fire for that preparation and for that research that I do. How else does it help me? I also do a lot of what you do, Mariana, in a albeit different way. I will, we all have our thing. I do like singing an awful lot, but I like tongue twisters. I like stretching my face. I like smiling. I'm very fond of big, broad muscle motions. And while these are things that work for me, I also know that a lot of my students, I ask them to try them. And guess what? They don't work for that person. So we need to find the cocktail and the ritual that will work for that person. One person I remember, we talked about power posing because power posing works for a lot of people. And if you don't know, power posing is when you strike a very confident pose. For example, like a superhero, like Wonder Woman, with a broad chest, with your hands on your hips, and you do that before your presentation to kind of channel in that energy of confidence. She tried it a number of times and said, look, it doesn't work for me. It makes me even more anxious. So we had to find something else for her to do. And what ended up working for her, and this wasn't like, it's not the magic pill. What worked for her was what works for a lot of people too, was meditation. Instead of speaking and using broad body motions, she needed to find 5 minutes just to center herself and be quiet. And then she did some stretching and went out. And then she
I love that, Laura, that you're saying, because it brings to a point that each one of us, it's unique. And you know, this is kind of a cliche, but it's not, because when we are exposing ourselves, we have our own unique way of being, of showing up to the world. And that we have to respect. How do we manage our emotions, and what emotions do we feel? Not all of us. I mean, we're tagging a big emotion here by the name of anxiety, but it could be so many things. It could be stress. It could be anxiety. Could be just, you know, those nerves that might be pulling out the worst out of you. It could be stress, depression, sadness, happiness, excitement. So each emotion will bring a different behavior in each one of us, and we should find the way to cope with our own emotions. Now, as a Tony Robbins certified coach that I am, I have to say that the number one thing that you have to do is tag your emotions correctly. So when you do that, when you feel whatever you're feeling, something that it's not comfortable in your body, just try to stop, breathe in, and think, what are you feeling? And what are you telling yourself to feel that, whatever that means? That could be anxiety, or that could be stress, for example. So stop, breathe in, and think, what is it that I'm feeling exactly? And what is it that I'm thinking to feel that way? Because thoughts precede emotions. So although we cannot control our emotions, we can change our thoughts. And that's why the positive talk works, Laura.
for many people. For sure.
Yes.
Yeah, for many people. I'll tell you one thing that I have noticed, that since a lot of the pandemic restrictions have been lifted and people are doing more public speaking, I have gotten different clients calling me with different sort of anxiety issues than they've ever had before. For example, one very common piece of anti-anxiety advice would be, if you're feeling anxious, go to your speech a bit early, meet people in the audience, talk with them a little bit. You'll see that they're people. And when you go on stage, you'll feel a lot more comfortable. That's a pretty standard piece of advice, right? However, the same people who used to follow that advice said, that is absolutely not working for me anymore. What I have is small talk anxiety. The idea of going and doing these, small, how are you doing, and having a conversation with someone face to face is making me increasingly anxious before I go on. So a lot of consults I was doing was, how do we face our small talk anxiety? That was a new one for me. But if you are feeling that, you are not alone. A lot of people are doing that. 2 specific consults that I have in mind right now are from people who are like, listen, I've never been like this before. I can't believe that I'm becoming extremely anxious going to meet and just talk to very small groups of people, one-on-one. And one of the first things we wanted to do was rule out, when was the last time you went to a doctor? And I wanted to rule out anything of, is there anything medical that's causing this anxiety? Because there's a difference between having stage anxiety or stage fright and having, underlying deep-rooted crippling fears. And they said, I really haven't been to the doctor since the pandemic because I didn't want to. I'm like, well, could you maybe make an appointment, make sure that there's nothing underlying there? And in 2 circumstances, 2 people had developed high blood pressure. Once they got that under control, they're like, oh, that was what it was. So if you have that kind of anxiety that you haven't felt before, maybe check in to see, when was the last time you went to the doctor? Is there something else going on there that may be worth taking a look at? So generally, I don't recommend the magic pill to anxiety, but in that case, you want to make sure that there's nothing, deep and underlying there. Absolutely. But yeah, after that, it's like, okay, now we've got to find your ritual. What is going to work for you? What is going to help you manage?
And as you're asking that, we have some comments and questions from the audience. Do you want me to go to that? Yeah,
Absolutely.
I think it's time to share what they're saying here. Okay, first of all, Karim Noob said LinkedIn Live is experiencing public speaking anxiety apparently, and I think that yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. And LinkedIn Live made us feel that anxiety as well. So then Andres Solves is asking, Mariana, what are your thoughts on Toastmasters development program? Laura, I'm going to bring the question to you and then I'm going to share my thoughts. What do you think about Toastmasters?
I'll make a confession that I have not been to Toastmasters. I have helped people get coached a little bit out of people who have been overcoached through Toastmasters. This is what I have come to believe, and this is just my opinion. I believe that Toastmasters is a very valuable organization and program for people who need to practice, get experience, and get feedback. I also believe there's a danger in staying in Toastmasters too long. Get the practice and the feedback that you need and know when to let it go. And usually about a year or so of practice and feedback, you should have a really good grasp of public speaking basics. You should have a really good fundamental speaking skill. And you should be able to move on from it and pick up other techniques and avoid sounding too Toastmastery after a while.
Yeah, so Andres, thank you for your question. I'm going to say that as Laura, I believe it's a great place to practice. So, I mean, having it as a practicing club, it's good. But I've been to a couple Toastmasters events, and what I believe is that it's very old-fashioned. So you're going to learn techniques on crafting your message, for example, but you're not going to really learn how to engage an audience, which is the secret sauce of public speaking. When you want to become an outstanding speaker, then the most important part is how you make your audience feel. And that is, I mean, that engagement, I don't think that Toastmaster has it. So go there to practice and evolve from it, like Laura was just saying.
Well, right. No, don't get me wrong. I think you said, the fundamentals there that you can learn and the feedback that you get initially are extremely good for anyone to do. But there are other places that you can practice right now and get a bit more nuanced information. Using new tools, things like TikTok, for example, and learn how to get to your point really quickly. I
am going to start doing TikTok very soon. So Clemency Wright comments, I tried a lot of Laura's techniques, which worked really well for me. So thank you, Clemency, for that comment. Andres says, Mariana Ferrer makes the blood flow, power to connect with the audience. Yeah, absolutely. That is powerful. Andres, thank you so much. Clemency also says, another technique I learned recently was the column of excellence, to visualize a circle in the floor and throw in anything you want to feel when you enter the stage. I threw in confidence, happiness, and control. Then I stepped into the circle and embodied those qualities. So again, visualizing helps. And I love that, Clemency, that you're doing the emotions. So
Clemency, I love that for you, about how you're bathed in the light of confidence. Man, I can only imagine how that might make you feel. Bravo for you. I love that for you.
Yeah. And then Clemency is saying, I love the concept of tagging your emotions correctly, Mariana. It helps you to reframe feelings. Words can be very mischievous, and you're absolutely right. So yes, understanding your emotions, it is the first step to becoming an emotionally intelligent person. And being an outstanding communicator requires that you have or you develop your emotional intelligence so you can feel yourself and you can feel your audience. And when you feel your audience, you're going to be there for them. I can I can attest to that. I'm so convinced, Laura. I am so convinced. People should see how we look. I think I'm going to share a picture on the YouTube, on the LinkedIn chat of our production here. Yeah, I am going to share that picture. Okay, Laura, in the meantime, while I share the picture, because you know that I have this thing that I cannot do two things at a time, why don't you share with us some of your speaking confidently tips? Do you have any that you can share?
They vary from person to person, but let's talk about the ones that are universal, that do work for everyone, which is the body confidence, the breath and body work that you need to do to feel confident on stage. Unfortunately, a lot of people who are very nervous will put their bodies into a position that signals a lack of confidence. And that's that cringing kind of posture where your shoulders are down, your head is down, you're not making eye contact with the audience. You're kind of collapsing your lungs and your shoulders when you do that so that you don't have good breath control. So when you start doing that, you not only look nervous, but you're signaling to your body that you're nervous, and it makes you more nervous. One of the best things you can do, it is so basic, but it works for everyone, is stand up straight, shoulders back and away from your ears. Breathe deeply through your belly so that you have a good, firm breath. Notice what that does to my voice. It lowers it. It makes it more controlled. So if you have that wavering voice, you've got that nice, strong breath support. It makes you look confident. It makes you feel confident. Another thing that you can take advantage of with your body is broader body motions. I will see very nervous people try to disappear on stage. They'll hide their hands or, just kind of cringe on down. Do the opposite of that. Stretch your arms out, use your arms, let people see your hands. When people see your hands, they trust you more as you gesture, and you also feel more powerful and you feel more confident when you do that. So those are some of the body work that you can do and the breath work that you can do when you're on stage and in the moment, and you find yourself being shaky voice or shaky legs. Any of those are tips that you need to have broad body motion.
Yeah, and adding to what you're saying, they can go watch Amy Cuddy's TED Talk on the power posture and on the fake it until you make it. I think it's a great TED Talk. I mean, I think and millions of people do the same because it is the second most viewed TED Talk in the world. Did you know that, Laura?
I didn't know. I knew that it was very highly viewed. And I know that video has been controversial in a lot of respects. But the truth about power posing is that's a new name for it. It's been used for millennia, for centuries in the theater. When an actor goes on stage or an actress goes on stage, a lot of their warm-up work is to adopt the posture of what emotion it is that they want to transmit on stage. So if you're a public speaker and you want to transmit confidence, it's an old theater technique to adopt the confident pose before you go on if you're an actor. So if you're a public speaker, adopt that pose before you go on. Now, of course, you may not want to hold a pose like Superman when you're on stage, but it does give you a boost to your confidence.
Well, and to what you're saying, Laura, I have to add that watch out for your pose, because if you want to project confidence, it is not the same as power. And power, I mean, if you embody the power emotion, you're going to project yourself as someone powerful. And sometimes that will draw some distance between you and your audience. It will not necessarily make you an engaging speaker. Now, confidence, on the other hand, it's so different. So if you want to project confidence, which will bring people in and engage people, then just practice confidence, which is a very different posture as well. If you put yourself, Laura, with power, with the power posture, your shoulders are stiffer, and if you put them with confidence, they're still very straight, but they're more relaxed. And when you're relaxed, people just relax with you, and they come over. They join you in that emotion.
Another posture that I really like for confidence, and a lot of speakers don't do this, I think it's a really great thing to do. If it's appropriate, smile.
Yeah, and if it's always appropriate.
Yeah, almost always. Almost always.
Yeah.
I've been in some, crisis communication situations where if I started out with a smile, that would be off. But there is a way to smile with warmth and understanding that isn't, too big and bright. So there's a lot of warmth techniques that we can bring in where you're not smiling broadly like a howdy doody doll, but you are smiling warmly at a person. But the smile helps you loosen your face, but it also transmits to the audience that, wow, this person is likable, confident, warm. These are all great qualities to have as you go into a public speaking engagement.
Absolutely. So as we wrap up, Laura, and again, I'm truly sorry that we're not being on camera, at least for LinkedIn. I don't know if for YouTube we're on camera or not, but I want to ask the audience that if you have any questions for Laura about public speaking or about crisis management, because you just mentioned something about your skills that I love, and it's the fact that you have this program also on crisis management, crisis communications. And when you do that, when you're in the middle of a crisis, anxiety, nervousness, being stressed, and sometimes it depends on why the crisis has erupted, but I do remember training and coaching some CEOs long time ago, because I was also a crisis management coach, and they felt very ashamed because of what happened, and they had to go on TV, for example. So do you have any tips for those specific moments that are so complicated for leaders?
Yeah, it comes down to practice on that. When we do crisis communication drills, we definitely drill. We ask the tough questions ahead of time. We brainstorm the tough questions behind closed doors and then drill leaders on how to answer them. And we look for things when they're looking into the camera. Are they looking into the camera? Are they sweaty? That tends to happen rather a lot. What can we do to reduce that and make you look confident as you're speaking? So we definitely do rehearse response statements and then practice and drill them, because trying to answer very complicated questions in the moment is extraordinarily difficult and extraordinarily anxiety producing. Absolutely.
Yes. Thank you for that, for reminding me of that stage in my life and for not doing it anymore, actually, because it was pretty stressful, I should say. So Laura, thank you so much for being here with us, and we're going to invite you again after we tried this LinkedIn thing again. We've been producing these events every Wednesday now, and we haven't had this technical issue before. Or at least not for such a long time, because we had some glitches, but not as long as this one. So we're going to invite you again. Will you accept our invitation?
I think I'm pretty much bound to at this point.
Yeah, and we always have such a great time.
I'd be happy to. You are delightful. You're an absolute delight, Mariana.
And same to you, Laura. Thank you, because you're generous with your super top expertise on public speaking and communications. And maybe the next one we should do it about storytelling, because that's another topic I love. Storytelling, how to tell compelling stories that people would just fall in love with. What do you people think about that title? Should we invite Laura to do that? Well, we'll have to wait for their answers. So let's wrap this up. Did you want to say anything, Laura?
Well, if anyone's still here and anyone's still listening, feel free to connect with me or watch my courses on LinkedIn Learning. Just do a search for Laura Bergells and you'll find them really handy. There is a course on public speaking foundations, establishing credibility as a speaker, and as Mariana mentioned, crisis communications.
I just tagged you on the comments so people know where to find you. And they will have you there. And Clemency saying, thank you, Laura and Mariana. So many great insights, much appreciated. Thank you, Clemency, for being here with us and standing with this glitches that we had today, this LinkedIn anxiety, LinkedIn Live anxiety. So to the rest of you, let me remind you that you can take Laura's LinkedIn public speaking program to improve your skills. If you'd like a more human approach and in-person approach, you can do our programs on public speaking for leaders who have something to say. But the most important thing I should remind you is that you remember that when you speak in public and you are showing up to the world, what you're really showing up is what you represent. And hopefully you'll be trained enough and you'll be confident enough to represent who you really are. Because I do believe that inside of each one of us, there's a shining star. And make sure that when you go on stage, you're trained to put out that shining star that you are. Thank you so much for being with us today.